And by the way, the very first edition of Phil Donahue's show on MSNBC, we featured Scott Ritter. And as part of that pressure coming from top management, Scott Ritter was in a debate not only with Chalabi, but we had a right-wing Senator Imhoff, and I have the bunch of the transcript, 2-on-1. We have the transcript in the book. Internet. Let's face it, most people are getting internet access. It's an important progressive principle that is to bring internet to poorer communities of color, and bring fast internet. And in some cities, they're trying to set up municipal internet, municipal wireless. That's an important goal. I don't have to preach to people who live out here near Silicon Valley that getting fast internet to all of the people in this country, and by the way, other countries are way ahead of us in access to fast internet. That's one of the most important things you can do. And if you're not on the internet, if you're trying to help people that are not on the internet, my view is that saving the internet is helping, say, Robert Greenwald's documentaries get into cities and towns and communities and colleges across the country. He uses the internet to raise the funds, and he's using an old media form, movie documentary, to bring the news. Thanks a lot for the question.
You mean there's something faster than dial-up?
I'd like all of you to thank Scott and Jeff for joining us.
Yeah, baby, it's episode 44 of The Whiners. What is that for? Therefore, I have no idea. On July 24th, 2025, Jeff Norman, Ryan Milton, and Morgan with you as always. And tonight, our special guest is the legendary Jeff Cohn, who was an associate professor of journalism and director of the Park Center for Independent Media at Ithaca College, I think for about 10 years. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff.
Correct.
He's also very good. That's and mistakes coming any moment, though. Founder of the Media Watch Group FAIR, that stands for Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. He was a producer and pundit at MSNBC, or MSDNC, as some say. He's the author of Cable News Confidential, My Misadventures in Corporate Media, a great book. Too bad the author was plagued by a terrible publicist. And he is the co-founder of the online activist group Roots Action, and he's also the president of the Woodstock, New York chapter of the Donald Trump Fan Club. Welcome, Jeff. How you doing?
It was all accurate until the very end.
I don't know what you're talking about. All right, one of those is not accurate. Who wants to guess which? All right, we know. All right, what are you drinking tonight, Jeff? Anything?
No, just water. I'm not much of a wine drinker, but I encourage everyone to do as they please.
Okay.
Well, I've taken a bit of a turn, so I'm having beer tonight. And I have water. Normally I drink water, Jeff. So I'm the one you're taking my role tonight.
Yep.
The water drinker.
I'll have to be the designated driver tonight.
That's exactly, yes.
You already said you're loose, and we don't know why yet. So we'll have to see about that.
I know what Jeff prefers. What kind of beer are you drinking, Morgan?
It's a funny one. It's bourbon barrel. It's bourbon barrel ale.
All right, very good.
Yeah,
I'm
good.
drinking a Mine is a kind of special wine tonight because it was a gift. I just moved into a new apartment, and a lovely couple, Anthony and Lauren, gifted me as a housewarming present this bottle of, it's a sparkling red wine. And you notice it says both Labrusca with an A at the end, and then right below it says Labrusco. What's the difference? Let's see. Ryan is our wine maven. Do you know what the difference is?
Well, I'm guessing that one is the formal name of the vintner, and the other one's the actual grape.
Well, one's the type of grape and one's the name of the wine. I forget which is which.
That's it. That's exactly varietal versus the winemaker. So Labrusco and Saletta is the grape, right?
Very good.
Okay.
Now, the other thing I want to just ask you real quick, I don't want to bore people too much with this because we talked about this before. I still don't quite understand it. This is a non-vintage wine, so they don't put the date on the label, and that is because they've harvested grapes from different years that go into this. Okay, so I get that. That's fine. But what I don't understand, and I'm not a wine snob myself, but because there are wine snobs who care about things like this, I don't understand why they don't put the date when they made the blend. Because it seems to me it's a big difference whether or not this bottle's been sitting around for 20 years or it's brand new. I can't believe that the blend is like the exact same thing every year. So
well, that's the whole point of the blend, is that you take many different years and you put them all together so that you get a very standardized flavor all the time. So you can't put the year like that because the year is typically the grape year harvest.
No, I know, but they could make it the year that they made the blend. They could choose to do that. You don't think it matters if it was done 20 years ago versus, and some blends might be, some years the blend might be a little better than others?
The wine powers have ruled, and they're not going to do it for you.
All right. Thank you for answering my question. Sorry to bore everybody else. What are you drinking, Ryan?
So this is actually the second time I've had this paper white this week. I meant to taste it earlier this week when I made some pesto al pasta, and it was so good because this Chardonnay is unoaked. So it doesn't taste buttery. It doesn't have any of those kinds of flavors. It's kind of crisp and bright tasting. So it's perfect on a hot day when you want to kind of cool out. In fact, they even harvest all the grapes at night. So they want it to be very cool. So that's what I'm drinking, paper white. And it's the perfect price range, Jeff. $12.
Well, I'm not going to put the price because this was a gift. And I want to say thanks to Lauren and Anthony. Very nice people. The bad news is they just moved away. So I'm not going to be seeing too much of them, but I really appreciate it. Very nice couple. All right, Jeff. So we know each other from the old days. We opened with an event that I organized back in 2008. Boy, I still look young and sexy. Well, you and Scott do too. You know what? I guess the thing that struck me most about that was how many people were there and the applause you got at the end compared to nowadays. It's kind of hard to get people excited about coming out to events, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I agree with that. You did a good job of organizing the tour. Scott Ritter, quote, our favorite weapons inspector, was helping to bring out the crowd. My book had just come out exposing a lot of the secrets of what's wrong with cable news, and that includes Fox News, MSNBC, and CNN. So I think we had a fun tour. A lot of people came out.
Yeah, I have a lot of fond feelings about those days, but life goes on. So I reached out to you because I saw this article that was published by Common Dreams, and it's about Stephen Colbert's cancellation coming on the heels of Paramount settling a lawsuit, which most people have interpreted as a bribe. What is your argument, kind sir?
Yeah, I think it's clearly a bribe. It's a bribe that greased what happened today, I think in the last few hours, which is that the Trump administration has approved the merger of Skydance with Paramount, which means the boss of Paramount, Sherry Redstone, is now $2 billion wealthier than she was yesterday. Clearly, this is a thinly disguised bribe. It's a new way of bribing elected officials. in the old days, you would do it, meaning a few months ago, you would do it through campaign donations. Now it's done when a guy like Trump files laughable lawsuits he could not possibly win in court. And instead of challenging the suit and getting it thrown out of court, generally before trial, which is what would happen with a bunch of these cases, they offer Trump a settlement to his non-existent presidential library. And then everyone who works for those media conglomerates is more intimidated and chilled in what they can say about our wannabe dictator in chief. This happened first with Disney in December of last year. They settled a defamation lawsuit that every legal expert I've consulted said they could not possibly lose in court. Then in January of this year, Meta settled a lawsuit that they could not possibly lose in court. And they gave Trump about $25 million to the not in existence presidential library. And then it was followed, as you say, a few weeks ago with Paramount. This was an even more laughable suit than the others. This is, people think it was a defamation suit against 60 Minutes. This was you harmed me by interfering in the election that I won, on the theory that CBS, in the editing of a Kamala Harris interview, had violated the Texas Deceptive Trade Practices Consumer Protection Act. There's no way they could have won in court, but Sherry Redstone wanted to become $2 billion wealthier, and they didn't just pay the bribe.
Well, let's tell people, if people who don't know, Jeff has worked in television in various capacities. I only mentioned some of his credits at the beginning. Otherwise, we'd be here all night and wouldn't have any show left. But you were the producer of Phil Donahue's MSNBC show. You've been on one of the first people to do Crossfire on CNN. So you know how TV works.
And I've seen censorship up close for all those years. I was there in the late 80s, 90s. And then I got banished from mainstream television 3 weeks before the invasion of Iraq for the crime of doing journalism and asking tough questions before our young people were sent over.
Hang on for just a second. But the point I want to make is the Kamala Harris thing, even though none of us are Kamala Harris fans, but to be fair, that's the kind of editing that they do typically, right?
Of course. It was a long interview. They edited it. This was a non-winnable case for Trump. But it gave an opportunity for Paramount to do the bribe. Today, the Trump administration approved the merger. Every journalist at CBS News is now further chilled. Colbert is defiant. He's losing his show in May, but he's utterly defiant. Jon Stewart. So
that's the strong part of your argument. Now get to the weak part of your argument, that this is evidence. What you've been talking about, it's the same reason Colbert was canceled.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt about it at this date. I mean, not only Colbert being canceled, Trump is boasting that $16 million bribe from Paramount to Trump is only half of it. He's saying that Skydance has offered to pay at least $16 million more to do PSAs, public service announcements, on behalf of Trump causes.
Right. But again, that's the strong part of your argument. What I'm not on board with, and I'll let Morgan and Ryan speak for themselves, is that it's the reason Colbert was canceled. You seem to think it's obvious, and I've heard you on a couple of other shows analogize it to Donahue being canceled when it was the top-rated show on MSNBC. Colbert also, I think, is the top-rated late-night show. But the difference is...
Not necessarily. It depends. It depends on the measure.
All right, close to it.
In that time slot, it's ahead of ABC's Jimmy Kimmel show and CBS's, I mean, and,
Right.
No, NBC's
But
Jim
it's fair to
Fallon,
say-
Daily Show.
Fair to
yeah.
say, relative to other talk shows, he gets good ratings.
Yeah.
But the key difference that I want to point out between what happened with Donahue and Colbert is that, according to reports that I have no reason to doubt, the show was losing $40 million a year.
I doubt it. I
And
doubt
late, well, hold on. All right. And late night TV shows in general have been, on the way out in one way or another. Here's
Well,
a Wall
here's the
Street-
thing.
There's like 30%. Well, let me just add to what Jeff Norman is saying, Jeff Cohen, two Jeffs now. What's his name? Gutfeld, Greg Gutfeld. He's got 3.2 million viewers. But in the 18 to 49-year-old category, I think it's something like nearly 29% drop in viewership in total for late night.
Yeah.
And Gutfeld is 1.5 million more than Colbert. So I'm wondering if it's what you had said in some of your other interviews, that it's really the dollar signs, that these companies aren't interested in truth. It's not like Phil Donahue, as I would say, who was fighting against lies that kill people. Stephen Colbert is a comedian. He's not out there being a journalist, getting at the truth of what's going on in the country.
Yeah, but I disagree. I think that he was fired. His show will be terminated in May for exactly the same reason we were terminated 3 weeks before the invasion of Iraq. It was political. If the problem was a loss of money, they could have trimmed the staff. I'm told they have 200 employees. They could have cut the band. There's no way that it was about that they're losing money and it can't be repaired. It was about, and this is just the first of many changes. It could be that Jon Stewart and on Comedy Central, which is another Paramount property, they may go next. That the head of CBS, 60 Minutes, resigned in protest because Paramount was meddling in the journalism. And let's talk about profits.
Definitely is true. But hold on a second. What is Colbert doing that is that political? I mean, he's very much.
It's an anti-Trump show.
That's what I'm saying. It's anti-Trump. Yeah, but on all of the other matters that are out there, let's take the Russia-Ukraine war. He's just like everybody else. So it's more like, if anything, on Trump, it's more like Trump's ego as opposed to an actual political thing.
No doubt. I mean, Trump has got a thin skin.
Yeah.
It's about Trump. It's about the head of the FCC, Brendan Carr. He's demanded all the tapes of the interview with Kamala Harris. It's a tag team of these various people within the Trump administration to protect Trump from a comedian. And believe me, if you want to talk about profits, one of the most profitable television shows in the history of television, not just in television news, is 60 Minutes. And the head of 60 Minutes has quit in protest. And then his boss, Ms. McCann, the CEO of CBS News, she quit in protest. So the heads are rolling. And I think it's all part of, let's placate the wannabe dictator in chief in order to get this merger going so we can get billions of dollars richer. If the issue was cost cutting at the late night with Colbert, they would have done it.
But Jeff,
Well, I don't know.
hold on a second. It's so. Forgive me. There is something that Jeff Norman and I talked about before, and let me define it for you, which is this Trump derangement syndrome. So I'm not a cheerleader for Donald Trump, but as much as I don't like it when people sit there and do just cheerlead for Donald, also just blatantly saying, he's dictator. I mean, think about also what happened under the Biden administration, for example, when they threatened using the Section 230 to shut down media, social media companies, for example, if they let JQ Public post something that was against the official policy of the administration. Or think about the Obama administration from 2009 to 2013, cracking down on whistleblowers left and right. Nobody came out and called them authoritarian.
I did. Yeah, I guess you're not familiar with my work.
I was going back and looking at some of your work, so that's why I'm asking you as well.
Okay, no, I appreciate it. Go on.
And you did go after Rachel Maddow for some of her bullshit as well. Plenty of times. Yes, I've seen
done it
that.
repeatedly.
Yeah.
JeffCohen.org. Look at my columns from 2017. You'll see me repeatedly defend whistleblowers against Obama administration. That was outrageous.
Yes.
They prosecuted more whistleblowers than all previous presidents combined.
Yes.
I wrote that line repeatedly. I'm a civil libertarian, but having been a critic of Obama on free speech grounds and having been a critic of Biden, there's nothing close to what the Trump administration has done in the last few months to bully, intimidate, censor, threaten. I mean, look, this guy's been suing journalists or threatening to sue. I remember when he threatened to sue The Onion, the satire publication, and they wanted the suit to happen. I remember when he did sue, this is back 40 years ago, he sued the architecture critic of the Chicago Tribune. So, I mean, again, let me defend him a second.
Now
he's got power.
He's also been sued more times than any other president in the history of the United States. So from his
you mean all of the people, all the contractors he defrauded? I live in New York. I've lived here since
state of New York, for example. Yeah.
You live in New York or New Jersey, and it's not just, the reason people despise, so many people despise him, not everyone. He's got his followers in New York and New Jersey. But
sure does.
Part of it is we know that he's been defrauding people. He does these repeated bankruptcies so he can defraud all these little people, working people, little companies. He's hated for that. So if he's been sued by a lot of contractors, fine.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about
since he's been president. You mean the combination of going after him criminally and civilly?
That's right.
The administration's moves have been challenged in court. Great. That's not a problem.
No. Again, I'm simply saying you're talking about Donald Trump's frivolous lawsuits. And again, I don't deny that he does frivolous lawsuits. I don't deny that he's got a thin skin or any of those kinds of criticisms. But what I'm saying, let me say,
I think you might have had in mind the criminal prosecutions that he's been subjected to. Those are rather ridiculous.
They're totally ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we can debate that. I mean, he's used state power since January in a way that no president has ever done. The Federal Communications Commission, and believe me, I've been a critic for 40 years. The Federal Communications Commission under Brendan Carr has been intimidating. They're making deals. They're making threats. It's unheard of what's happened since between January and today in terms of bullying the media. And he's got the power to do it because he has let these companies know, if you are not brought to heel, we will obstruct your merger.
Yeah.
We will investigate you.
Right.
Brendan Carr wrote Project 2025's portion about media. And now he's this, crazed MAGA.
Well,
that's not, the FCC has never done that. The Federal Communications Commission has rarely gone into content. And now that's all the guy does is threaten content reviews. And again, it's not just media that's capitulated.
Mm-hmm.
Today, Columbia University capitulated. They're going to crack down on protesters. My daughter is Jewish, 100% Jewish. She's been involved in these encampments to protest the atrocious happenings in Gaza at the hands of the Israeli government. Proudly Jewish. In the name of anti-Semitism, the phony charges of anti-Semitism. He's now brought Columbia University to heel. And they're going to crack down on the Middle East studies. They're cracking down on protests. I mean, this is an administration that's at war with freedom of speech, the right to dissent.
Yeah, well, I think there
is some truth to that. Yeah,
yeah, and I said so. We had Brad Smith on. I don't know if it was last week or the week before. He's the former Federal Election Commission chair, and I made a point of saying Trump has really been violating the First Amendment, I think literally and certainly in the spirit of free speech in several ways. I just want to ask you one more thing about the Colbert thing. That's why I said the rest of it, I think, is a strong argument. But you said two things that I want you to clarify, if you don't mind, Jeff. You said you doubt that the show's losing $40 million, and you said that you think they could have reduced the cost of the show. I don't know how or why you did your calculation. I said when it was $40 million, I have no reason to doubt it. Maybe there is reason to doubt it. Why do you doubt it?
I doubt it because everyone involved in the show is saying that figure is just brought out of someone's asshole.
Oh, really?
And again, if the problem is cost or profit or loss, and it's not about Colbert's content where he makes fun of Trump every single night in a very effective way, then they could easily have reduced costs.
Well, not if the $40 million figure is real. It wouldn't be so easy to reduce it by that much and still. They have
a staff of 200 at Donahue. Right. We were the biggest show at MSNBC, and I think we had a staff of 16. Mm-hmm. And we were an expensive show. We also had a live audience at the end. That was mandated by management. It's not something I ever wanted. So yes, you can reduce the cost of the show. Other shows have done so. And so again, I'm totally doubtful about the claim of money loss and whether that was the reason. The reason is, and it's becoming clearer, I think, every day, and you guys could have me on in a month and we'll see other changes at CBS and Comedy Central, I predict, within a few months. And I think we'll see that this is pure, naked intimidation by the state against creatives and against journalists. And I think Ryan may have a misimpression that somehow I apologize for the Democratic leaders. I've been denouncing them on all the grounds you brought up. And my main critique of what's happening today is that both Democratic and Republican administrations, going back to Reagan, accelerating under Clinton, they have allowed a few giant, a smaller, ever shrinking number of ever bigger corporations to take over our media and information system. And when you have that bottleneck of a few corporations employing all the comedians, employing the journalists, it's going to come to a bad end when you have a thin-skinned president like Trump ready to use state power to make sure that speech is restricted.
Jeff, I believe you're referring to the 96 Communications Decency Act, which I flashed.
Yeah.
Isn't it the Telecommunications Act? I think it's the same year. So let me just flash what I was looking at on the screen. Again, this is what the social media companies were brought to heel under the threat that they would lose the protection of this Section 230 in that Communications Decency Act. And to your point, I think you're right. In fact, that was one of the things I was looking at your website, and I saw the interview on State of the Media with Richard Eskow, which was a very good interview. And you went after Wall Street, you went after military contractors, very much like Bobby Kennedy, the pharmaceuticals role in controlling what media can have on television, and the monopolization of the internet. So, I mean, the interesting thing to me in reality is that you have people that are on the left and on the right who, don't like Biden on the one side, don't like Trump, whatever you want to say about those things. but they're actually very much on the same side with each other, who say, hey, our rights as citizens to be able to shape policy, not march down the street with a KKK, hood on, but to shape the policy of our government. That's being infringed regardless of party.
I agree 100%. I'm a critic of Joe Biden. I wanted him to get out. I didn't want him running for re-election. I was one of the leaders of the Step Aside Joe campaign.
It's very difficult because Scott Ritter, whom we had on there with you, had been saying, the surest way to ensure nuclear war is to continue the really Cheney, Biden, or Cheney, Obama, Biden, and then Kamala administration.
I agree. They're
no, I know. I'm sure you did. Absolutely, I'm sure that you did.
Right.
All right. Well, let's take a look at some of the other issues that Jeff is focusing on now. We said that you're the founder, or I guess co-founder of Roots Action, Jeff. I don't know exactly what you do, on a day-to-day basis. I assume you are an integral part of deciding what issues to take up and how to frame them.
No, I founded FAIR.
I know.
In 1986,
right.
And I no longer, as of 2000, I left there. I am a co-founder of Roots Action as of 2011. That's when we launched it. And yes, I play a big role in Roots Action, not in
Isn't
FAIR.
that what I said?
By the way, if people go to FAIR's website, they have a very strong article released in the last 2 hours about CBS, Paramount, and Skydance. And it's very scary. I learned a lot from it. Fair.org.
All right, well, I think I said Roots Action. So let's take a look at. Well, maybe we shouldn't do the full screen.
Yeah, you actually said Roots, but Jeff was talking about FAIR. That's all right. It's all right. I see the article. Yeah.
So we had. I don't know if you know Jose Vega, who's running for Congress. He's from the Bronx. You familiar with him, Jeff? Oh, you got to get on board him. We're kingmakers on this show. Yeah. We're going to get him
running against, or who's
Richie Torres.
Oh, Richie Torres.
Yes.
Yeah. I would support almost anyone against Richie Torres.
Jeff, you got to meet Jose.
He's really good. He's worth following and supporting. So,
I mean,
I mentioned Jose because the last time we had him on, we were talking about Mamdani, and Jeff is a little skeptical about. I'm not Jeff. I mean, Jose was a little skeptical about him. But all right, so this is like the role you play in Roots Action, like you would play a role in deciding to tout him and how to frame it.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
True.
All right. And we have no war with Iran. All right.
Me and Scott Ritter and you were talking about that back in 06, 07.
Yes. Well, that event I think that I showed was an Iran event. Yeah. Amazing. Let's see.
Pick your city. Pick your city. Tell me which one you want gone. Seattle, LA, Boston, New York, Miami. Pick one, because at least one's going.
He was saying that back in that era, if we were to attack Iran. Amazing.
Our world is, we're in dangerous strait. Like I would go further, Ryan. I would say Bush to Obama.
Oh, I agree with you. 100%.
To Trump. The warmongering from all of them. I mean, all of them have made every single year, the military budget increases, the threat of war increases, and it has done so under Trump just recently.
How do you make your state a nuclear-free zone?
I don't want to.
Unless
we're talking about radiation.
It's to keep.
Oh, nuclear energy you're talking about. Oh, okay.
And weaponry. One of the most
I'll
dangerous.
get on board with that. Weaponry. Yeah. No nuclear weaponry.
One of the most dangerous situations, and you'll find it somewhere on the rootsaction.org website, is the ICBMs, these land-based missiles that are in Montana and Dakotas. And, they're launched on warning. So if there's a mistake and they think we're getting attacked, there's very easy chance of error. And we could easily dismantle the ICBMs, the land-based ICBMs, because it's just the world is precarious with Ukraine, with the Middle East, with Iran. It's very, very dangerous. The threat of nuclear war including accidental nuclear war, is usually underestimated.
All right, well, it sounds like Morgan's not in agreement on the nuclear energy, though, issue. Are you, Morgan?
I would push for nuclear energy. But nuclear war, nuclear warheads, I am 100% with you. They need to go, and we need to put our productivity into something that's
I'm a foe of nuclear energy, but I'm certainly been willing to have civil conversations about it, because
I think we could.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But by the way, on the nuclear war, February 4th, 2026 is when the New START treaty expires. And Scott Ritter recently said in one of his shows, nobody in the United States, nobody in Russia, nobody's talking about how to extend these treaties again.
Yeah. We worked really closely at Roots Action until his death with Daniel Ellsberg. Mm-hmm. And Ellsberg is one of the real experts on nuclear war. And when he went to the Lyndon Johnson White House, he obviously had a falling out over the Vietnam War in the 60s. But he went there as a nuclear weapons expert, and he's been fighting for more discussions between the nuclear weapons powers to fortify these treaties rather than tearing them up. Trump tore up one or two. So in his first term. So yeah, we've got a real problem, and I listen closely to Scott Ritter when he talks about it.
All right. Well, we beat up on Jeff enough. Let's talk about some other media issues. I don't want to.
I got one more question.
Oh,
Jeff,
God.
No,
I tried, Jeff. I tried.
What do you think of MASH? I've just been watching every single episode of MASH.
It's incredible. Again, I mean, let me give you a long-winded answer. I mean, MASH was incredible. I've been watching the reruns of Hitchcock Hour, which is incredible. I've watched all the Twilight Zones. Mm-hmm. I mean, all of these creatives in Hollywood had to deal with censorship, including MASH. And you'll remember the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour was terminated by CBS because of its speech.
Yeah.
And there's no doubt about that. There's a documentary about it. I encourage everyone to watch. So here's one thing that I've often, with FAIR, I would go out to Hollywood. We'd have huge events in LA. Chomsky would speak. Alexander Coburn, a lot of anti-war leaders would speak. We'd get 1,500 people in an auditorium. And I got to know a lot of the creatives, Hollywood writers, actors, directors. And we would talk about how come the journalists who work for these giant conglomerates are so intimidated and don't speak truth to power. But you guys on shows like LA Law, and we could have thrown in MASH from an earlier era, you guys can get away with stuff. And they know it. Part of it is that, if it's comedy or it's entertainment, you have more leeway than the journalists do to talk about warmongering, to talk about why peace is better than war. That's actually subversive in journalism, as we learned at the Donahue Show on MSNBC or MSDNC, as Jeff called it. So they have more leeway. The other thing they have is stronger unions. In our country, the journalism unions are just weak. But in Hollywood, the Screen Actors Guild, the Screenwriters Guild, the Directors Guild, they have real power. And they went out on strike recently, and they actually won some demands. So there's more freedom. That's why I believe MASH could say things about war that a lot of the journalists who work for the same network could not say.
That's an interesting component. I'd never really thought about it. I know that my generation is one that rarely watches TV.
Yeah.
I'm binge watching every single episode, Morgan, so I'm not watching TV.
Yeah, and I'm binge watching stuff that's even older than MASH.
Oh my goodness.
The Twilight Zone is incredible, and the Hitchcock Hour is incredible. Great acting, great scripts, saying a lot about psychology and relationships. And of course, MASH was very much an anti-war program.
Well, that's very interesting. I've never seen MASH, so don't you guys
It's worth watching. And the
It
The
is
movie
worth
is
watching.
like-
I have a neighbor who's a real conservative guy, and he said, MASH is a bunch of communists. Is every bad thing he could think of, he would say. And then he said, but then when I went to Iraq, he said, it was just like that. It was just like the show.
I think a lot of soldiers and veterans love that show.
Yeah.
Well, I have to check it out. Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway,
And
go
it
ahead,
was-
Morgan. I'd interrupted you.
No, you're fine. I guess I just wanted to comment. I was pretty silent earlier. The whole aspect of, I guess, the Trump campaign using bullying tactics to get their way on media. What I also see is a shift in culture in media. Media was highly to the left a lot of the times, on culture issues. And I see that once Trump got elected, there was this palpable shift. You had the social media heads, Jeff Bezos, who, what is his news station again? Is it
Washington
Bloomberg?
He owns the Washington
Washington
Post. Yeah.
They're all up there watching him get inaugurated. What do you say to that? That it's more
Yeah,
of
good.
also a cultural shift.
You're
that's
raising
happening.
a good point. I mean, journalism at these big networks, there's no doubt that if you ask people their private personal biases, almost all of them at the big outlets are pro-choice on abortion and pro-gay rights. When we've done survey, and so you'd always hear right-wing media bashing groups say, oh, they're a bunch of liberals. But we did a survey of the biggest journalists of the Washington Press Corps about economics. And on economic issues, they were more right-wing than the average person.
Yes,
They
I've heard
used to-
that.
Yeah, they
Mhm.
wanted Social Security trimmed. They weren't that interested in the minimum wage. They weren't that big on taxing big corporations, unlike the masses of people are. So, yeah, culturally, the average journalist in the New York or Washington Press Corps is pretty liberal. They're pretty conservative personally when it comes to economics. They all have health insurance. They're all well paid, and they're very warmongering. They very much believe the national security state, what right wingers call the deep state, what we call the national security state. They're very solicitous toward that. But yeah, on cultural issues, I mean, here, Jeff Bezos, you brought him up.
Yeah.
He's from Seattle. When there was a gay rights ordinance in Seattle, he helped fund it, pro-gay rights. And then a year or two later, a few years later, in Seattle, there was an ordinance that would tax just the top 1% at a slightly higher rate to deal with homeless affordable housing. And he funded the opposition to that. So, there's a lot of people, the Koch brothers are similar when it comes to corporate power. They're just right-wing, very ferociously right-wing, but on cultural issues, they can be liberal.
Yeah, but what I guess I'm getting at is that you also see this cultural, on social issues, you see this cultural shift towards conservative during this new election. And what I would say that goes to, the Democratic Party have really done some damage to themselves in kind of anointing Kamala Harris. A lot of my age group has just been disgusted with either we've just proclaimed either be independent, or you have people who are getting swallowed up into the conservative movement from that. And I see that you have these corporate execs that are catching on to that pivot and making that shift.
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to placate the Christian evangelicals that are a huge part of the Trump base. But yeah, I guess I believe I was a big critic of Kamala Harris. I didn't want her to be the nominee. She doesn't stand for anything. Joe Biden didn't stand for anything except corporate power and war. You need, if there's going to be a Democratic Party that would provide opposition to Trump, who holds himself out as a populist, while a lot of his policies do much better for the rich and the billionaires than the working class and the middle class. If you're going to confront someone and defeat someone like Trump, you need to actually stand for something. You have to have an agenda that young people will be attracted to.
Isn't
Obviously-
Mamdani a bit of a populist in the same way?
Yeah, he's a populist in a progressive way. It's not divisive populism. It's inclusive populism. He's respected by young people, by people of every ethnic group. He won more than 500,000 votes. It was record-breaking turnout. He's
Yes.
a natural politician with policies that are going to be hard to execute, but he's going to succeed if he becomes the mayor. And, they're going to spend millions and millions of dollars. What we saw in the primary from the billionaires, Trump billionaires like Ackman, they're going to spend even more money to defeat Mamdani in November. But I'm looking forward to Mamdani winning in November and executing some of these policies. And then the Democratic Party would have a different brand for these young people who think the Democratic Party is, empty, two-faced.
Well, he makes all those videos that are very effective, which, I appreciate how he shows that it's not all about money, actually. I mean, I don't want to diminish the importance of money, but it's not all about money.
Oh, yeah. You can defeat organized money with organized people. But someone like Kamala Harris or Joe Biden can't get people enthused to knock on doors and make phone calls. Mamdani had a full policy agenda. He got all these people enthused, including my daughters who live in Brooklyn, and they were making calls and knocking on doors. And it's unheard of. This was the hugest local electoral campaign in American history. They had more than 40,000 volunteers, and they won 500,000 votes. But again, they're going to have to prove through social media and through activism and door knocking and phone banking that they can defeat even more tens of millions of dollars in smear ads. And of course, it's important to remember that the New York Times was opposed to Mamdani. They said they weren't going to be endorsing.
Yep.
And, a year ago, they said, we're going to endorse for president, but we're no longer going to be making endorsements in local and regional races. And then they wrote this scathing editorial attacking Mamdani.
So much for that policy, yeah.
And they knew that the words in their editorial would be used by the billionaires who were behind the super PAC called Fix the City, funded by Bloomberg and Ackman and DoorDash. And yeah, they were just quoting the New York Times in their attack ads on Mamdani. So again, our electoral system is a joke.
And it was probably written for that purpose, by the way, that article.
I
those
believe
articles are oftentimes written strictly so that they can then be quoted like that.
No doubt that the New York Times, again, what we have, if you get all of your news from MSNBC over to Fox News, what I call a corporate spectrum, a center to far right spectrum, you don't hear these other points of view. And I never see the political system in our country as binary. Oh, MSNBC is left wing and Fox News is right wing. I got fired at MSNBC. If it was left wing, I'd have my own show. So what we have is the corporate centrists controlled by the big conglomerates and the right wing controlled by the big conglomerates. And it's very hard to do a political campaign where you're being denounced by both. Mamdani was being attacked by the New York Times and the corporate center or corporate liberal, and they were being attacked by the New York Post, the right-wing paper owned by Murdoch. That happens every time. It happened to Bernie Sanders, but Bernie could raise donations with small, lots of small donations. That's another way you fight organized billionaires, is with small dollar donations from.
Well, you're clearly very enthusiastic about him, but put on your Karnak the Magnificent hat. What are you seeing? What do you predict will really happen? Who's the guy to beat? Cuomo or what's his name, the current mayor?
I think Mamdani's going to get in.
Adams.
It's going to be close. No, Adams there's
No,
a
I'm saying
split.
Adams is the current mayor. That's all I was saying.
Yeah, Eric Adams is the current mayor, and Ackman, the Trump billionaire who was funding Cuomo's super PAC with the help of Bloomberg and DoorDash, he immediately after the primary, he said, I'm moving my money to Adams. And I think, and they wanted Cuomo to not run. His name is still on the ballot, but they wanted him to say, don't vote for me. I'm no longer actively running. So I think what Mamdani's got going for him is all of the anti-Mamdani money will be split and anti-Mamdani voters will be split. And that's why I think he will eke through. At least
All
I'm
right.
hoping.
This is a clip we're going to be months.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think Mamdani also has youth on his side, which I also alluded to earlier. The youth they're not reading the newspapers. They're not watching the news segments. They're scrolling on TikTok and Instagram. So I think that's what the big pull to Mamdani was. He had a very refreshing brand. A lot of I knew some people that worked for his campaign as well, or volunteered with his
People
campaign.
don't want politics as usual,
Right.
They may not understand the
flashiness.
nuances, but that's kind of why, AOC is popular, Trump is popular, Mamdani is popular.
Right.
They're very different people, but I think that the thread that goes through all of it is that they're
Brand?
at least perceived as outsiders.
Well, they're
even though I don't
perceived as
think-
outsiders. Yeah.
Yeah, even though I don't
And-
think,
I mean, you referred to the videos and Morgan, you referred to this social media that he's so effective at using as a candidate. But one of the most effective videos was right after the Trump victory. He went into New York City and he interviewed working class people of every different
Oh,
ethnicity.
yes. I saw that one. Yeah.
And some of them were saying somewhat sheepishly that they'd voted for Trump. They didn't like Kamala over Gaza. They didn't trust Kamala. They're not sure about Trump, but they thought at least he was saying something. And those people probably voted for Mamdani. I mean, if the Democratic
we played that video when Jose was on. By the way, Jeff, will you make a commitment right now that you will look into Jose Vega? You don't have to commit to endorsing him.
It's ringing a bell when you say he's not supporting Mamdani. When I heard there was someone running against Richie Torres who was distancing himself from Mamdani, that made me a little bit reluctant.
Well, Morgan might know.
Well, so maybe he changed. We had him on like the day after Mamdani won the primary, so I don't know if Jose has changed. Has he?
Yeah,
Morgan?
full disclosure. So I worked with Jose in his campaign. He's running as an independent, so he's not necessarily primarying Richie Torres. I know that he was very appealed to Zoran Mamdani, his campaign and everything. What he falls back on, and he kind of alluded to this in the show, was when AOC got elected, she was saying the same things. She came out being very anti-establishment. And then you look at her now, and she's more to the right of Marjorie Taylor Greene when it comes to not funding Israel, or you don't see her really taking this proactive stance and being her quote unquote progressive. So I feel like he is very hesitant on the fact that Zoran Mamdani is basically absorbing people back into the Democratic Party when they really have no redeemable qualities.
But
he's
but it's
he's
hard.
a bit of an insurgent.
Yeah, it's hard to win. Remember how AOC got in, and I'm not as critical as you are of AOC. I'm somewhat critical, but not as strongly as you are. But she got in by running in the Democratic primary and defeating one of the most powerful Democrats in the House, Joe Crowley. And Crowley was going to be the replacement for Nancy Pelosi. And in a very Democratic district like Torres's district, it's going to be hard for an independent. I just don't think it's a winning strategy. If I was in that district, I would clearly vote for him rather than vote for Richie Torres. But I don't know that an independent can win in a district like that. AOC won by knocking out Crowley in the primary.
Yes, no, that is very fair. And it is a very, very blue district. But the one part that I saw when I was actually campaigning there is that it's highly gerrymandered. So you have the people who are actually going out and voting are the people who live in Riverdale that are somewhat better off than the people that make this district the poorest congressional district in the entire country. And those people just stay home because they've just been defeated by the system. They have no hope in the system. So our appeal is to, go to those people and say, you have to choose yourself. This man right here that you're electing, he's not going to be your savior. You need to kind of take this proactive stance in reclaiming, what is true to, American independence and be the citizen.
I'm very supportive of that analysis. I'm just not sure it's a winning strategy.
All right, here's somebody who's a Democrat. We had him on too. We got to play the role of kingmaker. Help us out, Jeff. Come on. We got to be kingmakers. It'll help the show. Rob Lucero, Los Angeles. Have you heard of him?
Well, let me mention before you answer. He's running in Los Angeles, which is the
well, downtown. I don't know the district number, but he's in downtown.
Who's the current Congress member?
I'll tell you. Give me a second here.
Jeff has all the
he's in the 34th congressional district.
And the incumbent
is, let's see here.
See, Jeff asks really intelligent questions. I just say support him because we had him on.
Well, I do follow these things. I mean, progressives have been wanting to see Richie Torres primaried in the Democratic Party. And there's a whole group.
Okay. This is Jimmy Gomez.
Yes, I would support almost anyone against him.
So let me tell you, Rob Lucero was a director of Bobby Kennedy's campaign, but now he is running, as he said, as a real FDR and John F. Kennedy candidate. And he's specifically talking about, reindustrialization of the economy, getting the base. So he's actually talking about how we should have a national investment bank for infrastructure for the United States, for example. So
from what you're saying, I would be very supportive. I mean, Roots Action looks for these cases on two grounds, on whether we'll support an insurgent. Do they have good policies? And this sounds pretty good from the little you've told me. And then second, can they run a strong campaign?
Yep.
Because a weak campaign against an incumbent gets the incumbent to be even more pro-war, more pro-corporatist than they might have been before the challenge. If you run a campaign against someone and you get 5 or 10%, then the incumbent says, well, I don't have to worry about these independent voters or these progressive voters. I can keep doing what I'm doing, which is serving the war contractors and serving big business. So, we would have to gauge whether this person is running a strong campaign or not, because that's another criterion that we use.
So whether or not they've been a guest on the Whiners is not a criterion?
I'm happy that you're featuring these insurgent candidates. Believe me.
Well, we'll definitely put him in touch with you if that's all right, because he is one of those fighters, also just like Jose, very similar on these very traditional policies that we haven't seen in 50 years, 70 years. Really.
Right.
Hey, did you guys, when I was away, and I'll tell you in a minute why I was away for a few minutes, did you guys talk about Russiagate and Tulsi?
I was going to talk about that. Yeah.
Let's do that before we say goodnight to Jeff. But the reason I was gone is this is a new place that I just moved into. I was trying to close the blinds because the sun was ruining the picture. I couldn't figure out how to close the blinds. So that's why I was gone. I was struggling with the blinds. What about Tulsi and Russiagate? What do you think about that situation, how the media is covering it?
Well, you can't trust the media on Russiagate. I was a major critic of Rachel Maddow and all of these people that were leading Democrats to believe that Mueller was going to bring Trump down over Russia collusion. It made no sense. It was exaggerated. I was saying that month after month. As you know, I give away with other judges the Izzy Award. We gave one during Russiagate. We gave an award to Aaron Mate, who was on the Real News Network and The Nation, debunking a lot of the exaggerations of Russiagate. Do I trust Tulsi Gabbard? No, but
She's doing pretty good on this. And
Yeah, I'm open. Look, I love documents. I want the Epstein documents out. I want.
Well, isn't it more about what Pam Bondi does? Tulsi, all she did is turn over the evidence to Pam Bondi. She doesn't have the authority to do any more.
Yeah,
Right.
That's true.
Again,
Also, the Martin Luther King documents, 230,000 documents she released on that too.
yeah, that I'm a big supporter of. I spent much of my years as a young journalist investigating the Martin Luther King assassination, and I consulted on the House Select Committee on Assassinations when they reinvestigated the JFK and King assassinations in the late 70s, and they concluded a likely conspiracy in both murders. That got very little attention in mainstream media.
So you said you don't trust the media's coverage of the Russiagate situation. I
Right,
guess,
because the people who propounded it basically lived on CNN and MSNBC.
Yeah.
And Rachel Maddow was taking pieces of evidence and exaggerating one after another. I mean, I can remember, Aaron Maté was doing this deconstruction month by month, and I was reading Aaron's stuff.
He's great.
But I mean, I know Randy Credico, the comic. Maybe you do, Jeff.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, when we started hearing from MSNBC how this shows collusion, they were trying to reach out to Julian Assange to find out what he had. Well, if they were colluding, they would have known what he had. I mean, there were all these internal contradictions to the Russiagate allegations.
Yes.
And so it was always, and what bothered me is there was a lot of good reasons to oppose Trump during term one. And MSNBC just talked about Russia, Russia, Russia over and over and over. You didn't hear about all these other policies that were helping big corporations and the wealthy and hurting middle class and working class people. That's what real journalists do. They don't just focus on one story, exaggerate it, and cover nothing else. So one of
the little mantras I've heard that keeps coming up, I think is so lame, is they're saying what's going on with the Russiagate resurgence, let's call it, is that it's supposedly just a distraction from the Epstein files.
Well, the distraction was Russiagate. I mean,
that's right. It's the reverse. Yeah.
Yeah. To me, that was the distraction from far more real evils that Trump was doing in term one. And this obsession, again, why did it start? It started because they couldn't admit that Hillary Clinton was a corporatist, warmonger, speaking out of both sides of her mouth, and she was a horrible candidate. Yeah. So they had to come up with an explanation of why she lost. I mean, she actually got millions of votes more than Trump, but she didn't win the election. Right. And they couldn't admit she was a flawed candidate running a flawed campaign. And Trump is a very talented, I believe, a con man, but very talented faux populist. I believe in real populism that puts the working class and the middle class first. And that's why she lost. It wasn't about Russia. And so the Democratic Party leadership, I mean, they decided, there's books about this. They decided it right after the day after Podesta and the others are calling each other, what are we going to say? And they said, well, we're going to blame Russia. And they, obviously Russia was meddling on Facebook, but it was insignificant compared to the big reasons she lost.
Right. Mm-hmm. And also that's what the internet is. The internet is the whole world spewing a bunch of bullshit. What difference does it make if the bullshit's coming from Russia or New York or anywhere?
I agree with you.
It's just, I mean, it's obvious, actually. Thank you for agreeing with that. I don't know why most people don't agree.
The weird thing is, I taught independent media for 10 years, and we really had a boom in independent, journalism, fact-based journalism. You had all these websites that were growing, and it was because of the internet. I'm talking about Democracy Now!, even the Young Turks, which is a little bit too much analysis, but they often report real news. Truth Out, Common Dreams, Counterpunch, you name it, The Intercept,
Counterpunch.
ProPublica, a nonprofit. So they
All
were
progressives, some Democracy Now. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
but they were all-
What
but
about
they
like
were-
Joe Rogan or Glenn Greenwald? Are you interested in that?
Well,
kind of
I
thing?
gave Glenn Greenwald the
An
Izzy
Izzy.
Award.
I know you did.
Yeah.
I threw that at you in our most recent Facebook debate when we were talking
All
about.
right. At any rate, yes, there
okay.
was this. The internet is the reason why. For the first, this is what I taught in journalism classes. You trace journalism history in the United States, and when everyone was reading newspapers, and then we got to the point where these daily papers had these expensive printing presses. So the cost of entry, the cost to compete with existing newspapers just went up. Then we went from the era of newspapers to radio, and to enter radio, it was even more expensive. Then we got to the television era, it was even more expensive. Then the internet comes along, and the internet just drops the cost of competition. It helps you do research. It helps you distribute. It's almost free to distribute. And that's when this independent progressive journalism, and journalism has been progressive in past eras, the muckrakers and what have you, but it boomed. And the downside of the internet is there's a lot of people that aren't journalists who are just dividers and haters and spewers. And they can put out these crazy conspiracy theories there are some conspiracies. There's also a lot of just false concocted conspiracy theories that get disseminated and believed. That's the downside of the internet, that there's a lot of people with no understanding of how to do research or how to be fact-based or how to do journalism. And they are able to get an audience. So you have a mix.
The other downside is even some people who are good, however we judge good to be, can't break through because anybody is on. There's no more gatekeepers.
Hey, Grok, is what Jeff's saying true? Oh, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, one of the latest.
Sorry, that's the new thing, Jeff. I don't know if you are aware of that. You got to ask Grok if it's true.
Oh, right.
Grok, summarize this for me.
I've done that on videos. Okay, sometimes AI, you don't know. So I asked Grok, like, is this a real video? I think the
Just
last one I
double check.
watched. I'm sorry.
Yeah, just double check anything from Grok. I mean, in journalism school, journalism class, I would tell people, I don't mind you using Wikipedia, but I do not ever want to see Wikipedia as your final source.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
no, that's so fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing, I can't believe people fall for these. It's become like so ubiquitous lately, are these videos on Facebook of like rock stars doing heroic things that never actually happened.
Yeah.
Like Bruce Springsteen delivering, supplies to flood victims on a day he's in Europe, and it was so heartwarming. Robert Plant got together with Jimmy Page, and it's like, what? That never happened.
Yeah. With the internet, it's so easy to fact check this stuff. Where is Bruce today?
Yeah, right.
It's so easy to fact check, but a lot of the people spewing, and I believe dividing, and the Democrat-Republican divide is often phony. But if you get people hating each other, then the wealthy elites are laughing all the way to the bank.
So maybe that's the actual
It's
strategy.
interesting to watch how gullible people are. I mean, all this stuff of like Bruce Springsteen delivering supplies to the flood victims, whatever. It's, he's such a wonderful guy, and people are crying about all this fictional story.
And maybe the real thing should be not so much be against Trump, be against Mamdani, but rather to organize all of the supporters in the base of both of these people, for example, around a policy to restore the United States when it was, maybe what Kennedy was thinking before he died, or what Martin Luther King was thinking before he died, where, I put this picture behind me of Sputnik and Apollo, what was it, 50 years ago this month, meeting in space, right? This idea of what do we do to actually not only move ourselves forward, but bridge the divide with other countries, as opposed to always looking for the next conflict, which will generate numbers, followers, dollars, whatever, but something that's a little more boring, but fundamentally ensures that we're going to be here 50 years from now.
Yeah, it generates a lot of ratings for television
Yeah.
news. Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I mean, I think there are a bunch of racists and haters among Trump supporters, but you don't dismiss all Trump supporters. And the beauty of Mamdani in that video right after the election, why did you vote for Trump? AOC did the same thing. I said, there's no doubt in my district, if you are a constituent of mine and you voted for Trump, I want to hear why. And I mean, that's the right approach, is to get beyond the partisan divide and try to mobilize working class people and middle class people to stand up for peace and justice and a government that's on the side of the majority and not on the side of corporate war-making elites.
Yep.
All right. Well, if people want to donate to your peace and justice efforts at Roots Action, I guess you don't need any money, so we should tell leaders to forget about it.
If they want to donate, it's rootsaction.org. If you want to make a tax-deductible donation, you go to rootsaction.org, and we have an education fund. You'll see that at the top, and your $25 or $50 donation is tax-deductible. That education fund doesn't do any electoral work, avoids lobbying, and it just does education about peace and justice. Some of the things that all three of you have been saying about the history of our country, you know, what Kennedy was trying to work for peace before he got assassinated. You know, we do education work through the education fund, and those donations are tax deductible.
Okay. And your website is jeffcohen.org.
My personal website. I don't need
I was just thinking, back in the day, Move On was sort of like the status of Roots Action. Is that a fair analogy?
Yeah, you guys will enjoy this story. The reason we formed rootsaction.org is because we'd been supporters of Move On in 2003 when they were leading the opposition to this crazy invasion of Iraq. And they were using this new tool of email organizing. And it blew us away, Norman Solomon and I, the two founders of Roots Action. And they were standing up for peace. And then when we learned about warrantless surveillance that Bush was doing, they stood against that. And we noticed something happened when Pelosi became the speaker in 2007, and then Obama became the president in 2009. All of a sudden, and they continued the policies of war, endless war, and surveillance. And we noticed that Move On no longer talked about war or surveillance.
That's right. That's right.
And so we set up Roots Action to be a peace and justice group that would stand up for our principles, whether it was a Democrat in the White House or the Speaker of the House or a Republican, and that these principles would be firm. And so when I hear all three of you talking about the need to go beyond these partisan divides, this is why we did it, because we saw Move On sort of got sucked in and became a Democratic Party operation that no longer fought for peace and justice. And one of the main issues that put us on the map was our defense of whistleblowers against the persecution at the hands of the Obama administration. All these national security whistleblowers. And we were the first to defend Snowden. We defended Chelsea Manning, then Bradley Manning. We campaigned for Manning to get the Nobel Peace Prize. So that
and nobody talks about the Patriot Act anymore.
Right. No one talks about these issues.
Right. You could say that the same thing about the entire so-called peace movement, or almost the entire. When we showed that 200 person crowd reacting to you and Scott way back when, that all went away when Obama was elected.
It shrunk. There's still a lot of important peace groups. Win Without War. There's a great group. You should have them on your show. It's called the Quincy Institute, Responsible Statecraft. They're the most important think tank on war and peace issues.
Responsible Statescraft?
Yeah.
I just tried to book.
I watch their show, their things all the time.
Yeah. And
what's his name? Tristy's with them, right?
Trita Parsi.
Yeah, Trita Parsi. Yeah, I just tried
Parsi.
to book them and I got ignored, but okay.
Yeah. So the peace movement never fully went away, and we formed to, but it shrunk up because it became, it got sucked into Obama continuing some of the horrid policies of Bush, and they looked the other way, and they became narrow partisans instead of standing up for their firm principles. That's why we formed Roots Action. I was able to explain that. I was just on C-SPAN a few weeks ago, and I was able to give this long explanation. And I think I was appealing to people that were not progressive in any way when I told them we're an independent group. We're an independent progressive group that has these principles no matter who's in power, which party's in power.
I'm not progressive. I am independent, Jeff. So I appreciate that.
I'm independent as well.
No, I think we speak to independence. I think part of the reason, I think Mamdani picked up independence. We know Bernie did. Bernie
He sold out to Hillary, though, so forget him.
No, I don't buy that. But that's a long debate.
He bent over to Hillary.
I've had criticisms of Bernie, but my criticism was how he did it and when he did it. But campaigning for Hillary at the very end to defeat Trump, I think, was the right move.
My criticism of him is that he has terrible posture. He's always hunched over.
But his arms are always up in the air.
That's true.
Yeah, I knew.
All right, one last question about social media, Jeff, and you. What's your? Where can people find you on X?
I don't do a lot. I'm Jeff Cott, JEFFCOT on X, and I'm on Facebook, as you know, Jeff. That's how we communicated.
Yes, we have a love-hate relationship. I love you, and you hate me.
Well, wait, Jeff. Has Jeff Norman changed after this conversation? Because I heard about that Facebook thing.
That's what you said to me. You said to me, "What happened to you?"
I think I never would have expected Jeff Norman to be apologetic for Trump on almost any issue. So that's what shocked me.
I'm unpredictable.
What do you say
Jeff.
now after this show?
Well, I mean, we had some correspondence leading to this show, and I can see we still agree on many of the biggest issues.
Yeah.
And, I think the four of us agree that one of the biggest issues is war and peace, and the leaderships of both parties are in league with the military contractors. They just keep increasing the military budget. Biden did it every year. When Trump did it every year in his first term, I've got quotes. I wrote columns. Pelosi was bragging about how she was helping Trump get all the money, even more money than the generals asked for. And Schumer did the same thing, bragging about how he was working with Trump. I mean, if you're putting most of your federal discretionary budget into war or war preparation, that's not money that's going to housing, industrialization, infrastructure, healthcare, education.
Yeah, if you say make America great again, all of those things, right? We have to put money into those things. We have to invest in our real economy. Yeah. I'm very upset about the fact that he's very big under the H-1B visa thing, where we're importing lots of cheap labor, not just for technology, but all kinds of things. And we have an American population that absolutely could fill tons of jobs. And we don't even tell corporations that they should be hiring American or building American industry, machine tools, any of that.
Right. Well, I've always been for that. I don't know what you guys think of Ro Khanna, the congressman, but he's got a whole program. He's a progressive. He's got a whole program for reindustrialization. You mentioned Richie Torres being the poorest or one of the poorest districts in the country.
It is.
Ro Khanna is in probably the wealthiest district in the country. And he's written a book and article after article about how we have to take that wealth and move it into places that have been deindustrialized. So I'm a big supporter of that.
I'm not sure the concept, the way you're saying it makes sense, but we do have, historically, we have tools that we can create credit to invest in.
No doubt.
Country.
I mean,
no doubt.
I like the infrastructure bill and the CHIPS bill. But to me, those are puny compared to what's needed. Let's cut.
You need trillions.
let's cut the military budget, and we have the trillions.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but I think the bigger issue is that we don't have the money, period. I mean, we're 30-some trillion dollars in debt, and it's
yeah, because billionaires have paid less and less taxes as they got richer and richer.
yeah.
And we waste all this money on the military. Why are we modernizing the nuclear weapons instead of negotiating against this craziness? So, I mean, there's money. We're a wealthy society. It's just misspent. There's a reason. And you know, Trump is trying to get all these other countries now, and he may have succeeded, to spend a bigger amount of their money on military so they can buy U.S. weapons. That's a nightmare. There's a reason why all these countries in Europe have universal health care and we don't. There's a reason all these other countries have free or inexpensive higher education, and our higher education puts all our young people into bankruptcy or into debt. And it's because they don't spend all of their money on the military like we do, but Trump's trying to push them in the wrong direction, and he may have succeeded.
Well, I'm going to agree
All
with
right,
you there.
I can't believe you're the president of the Donald Trump fan club for the Woodstock chapter. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, he may be dropped soon, but
Yeah, I think there are some Trump supporters around here. In fact, down the street, a guy wears has a Trump flag, and then a few doors down from him, someone's got a flag saying Trump for prison 2024.
Oh.
So we have a real free flow of information on this block, and thankfully no fights have ensued. I'm going to have to click off soon.
No, I think we've had a great time.
overtime.
Yep.
All right. Thanks a lot, Jeff. And let's do it again sometime soon.
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. Nice
Thank you.
meeting you, Morgan.
Thank
and
you,
Ryan.
Jeff. It was such
Yep.
a pleasure. Thank
Nice
you.
to meet you. Thanks for putting up with us.
Bye-bye.
All right. And thanks to our beloved audience. Join us next week at the usual time, 7 p.m. Eastern time. I think there's a good chance we'll be talking about AI next week. So we'll be
Hey, Grok.
there you go. All right. Take care, everybody. Good night.